Good morning, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. So, apologize on the video not being able to happen yesterday. Yesterday morning, woke up too late. Then, work was rough. That's what happens when you live in Georgia. You're a landscaper, and the AC in your truck decides to go out. Despite that, onward we move. So, this time, and really, I was trying to do this last night. We were going to go ahead and talk about the weather to be expected over the next 3 to 4 weeks, particularly as we head out of August and into September. We're finally starting to get closer to fall here. We're hoping we can get a pattern that's like that because the heat has gotten ridiculous. It's been ridiculous and it hasn't gotten any better. But unfortunately, it looks like it's going to get a little bit rougher before it gets a little bit better. That being said here, taking a look at the hazards here for temperatures, there's actually a high risk for excessive heat over here to the southeast right now. So Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. There's another chance for high heat towards the 22nd and the 23rd. So definitely keep an eye out on this, of course. Excessive heat is a moderate threat that stretches all the way into the Tennessee Valley and even into the Ohio Valley, and slight risk even stretch into the mid-Atlantic, the heart of the country, and more. So definitely keep an eye on this over the next week here for sure. Make sure you have water in abundance. Make sure you have the AC working in abundance, Freon, whatever you need to keep yourself cool throughout the day. And don't end up like I was yesterday, because that was not fun. So as far as the temperature outlook as a whole is concerned, there is some relief, it looks like, as we get closer to the end of the month here. The 3 to 4 temperature outlook, this is based on below normal temperatures here. So it's not like it's going to be a crazy difference, but we do see more cold air starting to work its way to the south and east here. I'm seeing trends that kind of lean back towards a positive PNA setup where it's warm out west and cooler off to the east. How much cooler is still a question here. One area that just can't seem to get away from the heat, unfortunately, seems to be the Northwest this year. Towards Washington, Oregon, Idaho. You guys have been hot for most of the year, and it looks like that isn't going anywhere, unfortunately. So just as I've said, for anyone that was in those excessive heat areas, you should probably also make sure you're stocked up on the water if you aren't already, and make sure the AC has the proper tools and fluids that it needs to continue running. The greatest areas of concern when it comes to heat are these 60 to 70% areas. Confidence isn't super high at this point yet, but this could obviously change, so take this with a grain of salt. But Florida, of course, towards the Gulf Coast states, and then over towards the desert Southwest is where we're expecting to see those above average temperatures with high confidence. Of course, other areas in the orange here, we're still pretty much in the same areas, a little bit more so towards the Gulf Coast, but a little further inland. Texas in there as well, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and Cali, of course. And then over here towards Alaska, there's actually a pretty good chance of above average temperatures there as well. Not surprising considering we see the above average chance over here towards the northwest as well. But towards the Ohio Valley is where we expect those cooler than average temperatures. There will be a slight difference. It's not a super high chance that it'll happen. It's only a 50 to 55 percentile area, but nonetheless, we'll take it, right? But that being said here, nothing's really changed on our overall monthly outlook. Precipitation isn't necessarily a major issue right now, but it's going to be very hot over the next 8 to 14 days, of course, across the entire country. So definitely let's make sure that, like I said, we're staying hydrated and avoiding excessive periods of being outside. And then, of course, if you're over towards Maine, you're over towards the New England area, far northeast, actually might be really nice over there this week. Kind of jealous, not gonna lie. Alaska especially is going to be very warm here, where they're seeing a 60 to 70 percentile chance here. Also, let's make note of this 70 to 80 percentile chance. You don't see that too often. Definitely not something you want to see. I'm very thankful that I'm not in that, but the 60 to 70 is where I'm at. So definitely going to be hot over here towards the southeast for the next week or so. So let's make sure, again, hydration is key. Keeping cool is going to be key. That being said, let's go ahead and look at the severe weather threat in the short term. Starting to see a little bit of a downtrend in the action. Yesterday, for example, wasn't a very active day, so that did kind of help me feel better as far as not making a video. Only one hail report and 41 wind reports, and they were relatively isolated. I was kind of expecting that, though, to be honest, so no real surprise there. As far as today's severe weather threat, do have 3 marginal risk areas for tornadoes. 2% area over towards Buffalo, 1 just outside of New York here, just south of Boston as well, and then 1 over towards Richmond and Virginia Beach towards the mid-Atlantic coast. Main threat's going to be wind. It's going to be the small pocket, of course. We could see plenty in the marginal risk as well. And then also there's the marginal hail threat. Overall, it's not going to be another super active weather day. We could see what happens with that. And then tomorrow we shift the threat a little further to the north here. We're starting to look towards Wisconsin and Minnesota here. Duluth and Minneapolis are the main areas of interest there. No tornado threat at this time. There is a 15% wind threat and a 15% hail threat, so we'll have to see how that plays out. We'll take a deeper dive maybe tonight or tomorrow, depending on how things trend with the models here. Then on day 3, we see only a marginal risk right now. This is now starting to include Detroit, parts of northwestern Ohio here. There's plenty of other areas like Grand Rapids, Sterling Heights, Warren, Warren, Michigan here too. So that being said, we'll go ahead and take a look at the early stages of what we could see. I don't expect a whole lot right now. Mainly going to start out by looking at the upper level pattern here. Not going to really get into the so-called kinematics at the lower levels. Not a lot really to expect right now. But this is the setup for today, where we have this trough that's still in play here. It's more prominent, of course, at the mid to lower levels of the atmosphere, around 500 to 700 millibars. It's been a short wave that's been in play for the last few days, causing severe weather. But we're probably going to be seeing that out of here by the time we get towards the end of today. As far as tomorrow is concerned, it's another little trough that develops here. Mainly going to be hanging north of the border, so up in Canada we could also even see some severe weather too. And then, of course, as this trough begins to move out towards the end of this week, the heat dome begins to build, and this is when the heat will become extremely dangerous. So this heat dome builds. We do get a trough that tries to dig in here and settle in for a little bit. It may cause slightly cooler conditions over here towards California for a moment. Could increase the storm chance, but just as quickly as it tries to build, it kind of falls off a bit, and the heat dome really starts to expand here. And it's at this point where those temperatures could get really dangerous. Also, another area to note as far as storm development could be concerned would be more so towards the high plains, maybe the Dakotas. Towards this little arch here is where I'm expecting additional storm development to be concerned. And then, of course, we'll watch this ridge move off to the east a little bit in the upper levels. So and remember, it was towards the 22nd to the 28th time frame that we were looking at that excessive heat for multiple areas. And this is a very good indicator of that right here, just based off of this ridge that we see developing here. Eventually, towards the end of the month, it looks like we start to see this ridge begin to push off to the west a little bit, and that's what's going to be the beginning of our positive PNA setup. And then this, as a result, could increase severe weather towards the mid-Atlantic, maybe, if this pattern holds up. Of course, as we look further and further into the model runs, confidence in the said runs decreases a little bit because we're looking much further out. The more model data we have, the better. And really, there's only a handful of models that go out this far in the range. This is 16 days out at the end of the run. So here we are looking at the mid levels, by the way, and it's pretty much just verifying with the 200 at this point. Even though we're looking at a slightly lower level, we see a really strong ridge begin to take shape here towards the 20th, 21st, 22nd. Here's that point where we're looking at excessive heat. And then here's where that ridge starts to move off to the west a little bit. So it's pretty much an identical deal here as far as the slightly lower levels of the atmosphere. As far as severe weather potential is concerned, we'll go ahead and even look at 700 here real quick. And we'll have to let this one load in the meantime. So like I said before with the 700, we're mainly going to be watching on the flanks of these troughs and these ridges for the greatest potential of severe weather. Good indicator of that was looking at tomorrow's setup. Here's looking at the shortwave. It's a very weak trough that pops up through here. Kind of holds out through the day on Thursday as well. And then as that ridge develops here, like I said, really it's going to be towards these flanks here where I would expect a lot of activity to develop. You kind of see a little bit of that being represented here. But as we continue to go forward, as that new trough tries to develop over here, or at least that's what I'm thinking is happening here, towards the 25th, that's when things kind of begin to change here. The storm pattern looks a little bit more active towards the northeast. As far as looking into the low levels at this point, like the low level jet, not going to feed into that too much right now. Even looking at 700 at this point can be kind of tricky, or just really doing these kinds of outlooks, forecasts can be difficult in general, because any sort of tropical system that could come in can pretty much throw this whole pattern out of whack here. So definitely need to be keeping an eye on that. In fact, we could actually see a couple of indicators of maybe some tropical activity here, because if you look at around 300 hours out, you do see a little disturbance that's coming in from the Caribbean into the Gulf and actually into Texas. This could come into play, and then we see an additional little area of interest over here. They don't look super strong, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, and something that I'll be keeping in the bank for sure, because that could definitely end up changing things here. But like I said, over 200 hours out, can't have a lot of confidence in that. So here's a reflection of the ridge that's coming in. Here's what we're going to be looking at for temperatures here. Go ahead and just throw this into a loop here. The areas in the white are when we're getting into the 90s, into the triple digits. I call that incendiary heat. Anywhere in the pink, we're getting into the 80s and into the 90s at that point. And here is where things start to really get out of hand here. This is the 24th right here. We're seeing 110, 112 degree temps already by this point, and these actually end up pushing even further off to the north here. 24th, actually my area is going to see 108. Oh my gosh. I'm going to see if I hope I don't have to work that day. Oh, who am I kidding? I know I'm going to have to. But yeah, over here towards the southeast in particular, could be some really dangerous heat ahead here. You're thinking it's hot now, just get yourself ready now. It's about to get a lot worse, unfortunately. I hate to be the bearer of bad news there. Even then, the triple digits even stretch pretty far off to the north here, even getting into Montana, which is crazy. It's very unusual to me to be seeing the 90 degree temps all the way over towards Washington even, which is nuts. Like I said, the area that looks the best through all of this right now is going to be over towards the far northeast, around Maine, New England area, and parts of New York. Anywhere else, it's going to be rough. So, like I said, hydration and staying inside, definitely going to be important. And that's not the only thing to worry about here. The relative humidity is also a big concern too, considering the fact that with that relative humidity, that increases the heat indice along with the dew point. So definitely something that has to be monitored with extreme concern here. So here's a look at those relative humidities. And as we continue to go forward, we can clearly see over towards the southeast, we're still getting to those 70s, 80s, unfortunately. And this is towards the peak here period of heat here. Period. And you can see it's not looking like it's going to be too nice to us over here. The relative humidity is going to be pretty oppressive over here, as well as the dew points. Other areas, at least towards the central plains, might be a little bit lax on the heat. The Corn Belt's another area to watch, but it doesn't look like it's going to be as bad as what we have seen. Some of these areas over here off to the west here are going to be bone dry. Nothing too far out of the ordinary there. But even then, dry heat, wet heat, potato at this point, because even then it's just not gonna feel good outside. Like I said, unless you're over towards the northeast, you're not gonna be enjoying this heat. You have to be some kind of crazy to enjoy 110. And I thought I was pretty tolerant of heat myself personally. As far as the dew points are concerned, this is where it really hurts. Okay, I was trying to make sure I had the date right. But this is getting towards that peak heat period right here. 60s, 70s abundant across the eastern half of the country here. Even the 50s and 60s try to push their way even past the Rockies here, which is interesting. Those moisture returns are sufficient enough to where we could see additional periods of severe weather as far as next week is concerned too. Look how we had that little spike of about 60-degree plus dew points as we got towards the 20th and beyond here. So definitely something to keep note of here. I think that could be some Pacific moisture in there as well too, which is interesting. So that being said, definitely need to be keeping an eye out for the potential of severe weather. Like I said, I'm thinking in particular the point of interest will probably be, and hopefully I have this right, but I'm thinking mainly around this region here. I'm not going to rule out parts of Minnesota being there as well, but anywhere across this region over the course of the next week or so, that's going to be what I would call the bullseye. So that being said, let's go ahead and get on into this one of my favorite models to look at here. This is the lightning flash density. This is also another way to verify the threat for thunderstorms, maybe even severe, just based on the forecasted amount of lightning flashes per day. This isn't a guarantee that you're going to get storms in your area, but if the more lightning flashes that you have, the greater the probability. So here we are. We're going to put this into a loop here. I'm going to try to make this go a little slower so that way you can see everything. So this is heading into today, this tomorrow, our severe weather threat. Friday might not see much in the way of severe. By Saturday and Sunday, here's where our pattern begins to flip here. This is where we're going to see most of the weather really start to take shape here at this point. Like I said, it was going to be on the edge of that heat dome ridge that we have. And then by the time we get towards the end of this run, which is actually 10 days long instead of 16, this is the only model that has the Euro is the only model that has this feature. But nonetheless, though, you can see clearly by the time we get into that pattern change, we're looking off to the northern plains and the northern parts of the Midwest here for storm development. So now, last thing we'll go ahead and do is look at what the overall forecast will be as far as precipitation, and we'll be out of here, and then I gotta get ready for work. All right, so we're back on the GFS here, and what we're doing now is we're taking a look at Precip here in case you just skipped to this point. But like I said, I'm already seeing the verification of the storm systems over here towards Canada. Already seeing our severe weather threat for maybe Thursday. This does kind of take the shape of a squall line here, which is interesting. It'll be happening earlier in the day, which is interesting as well. Then as we go ahead and get into later into the month, that's where we start to see our storm chances increase over towards Montana and Wyoming first. And then we'll start to see that threat shift a little bit to the east. I'm really thinking towards the northern edge of the border here, we could see a lot of action as well. Outside of that, the heat's going to be running rampant. It's already been running rampant, but it's about to take a little bit of a turn here. So like I said, get ready for that. And then as we draw closer towards the end of the month, we'll start to see that shift, as I mentioned earlier, towards southeast. Wow, I was about to say southwest. Southeast, and then eventually towards the mid-Atlantic as well. And then also the tropics also have to be monitored as well. Might do a video on that either tonight or tomorrow, depending on how severe weather plays out today. I don't expect too much, so it's a pretty good chance that we'll end up seeing that video tonight. But if not, then definitely we'll have it up by tomorrow evening. But in any case, thanks to anyone that chose to watch today. If you did, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Also smash that share button too, because you might want to warn them. Yes, it's hot now, but it's about to take a real turn here in a second. So it's not something you want to mess around with. No reason to be scared, but definitely make sure that you're taking the proper precautions. But anyways, enough rambling. Talked at you for enough today. It's been Tyler, Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys probably this evening. Till then, take care, have a nice day, and stay cool.